Hello, everybody. Um, First of all, let me thank Manu for a lovely, lovely scarf, and thank you for all my subscribers. And tell you what we are wondering about today. Today, the subject is a continuum of the trauma video, and the thing which I want to explore with you all is how we relate and whom do we marry or relate to hate, to be in power struggle, and to be dissatisfied with. At the beginning, as I always put a few thoughts, let me just read a few thoughts about the marriage, about the relationship, so we can proceed from that. Let me just put my glasses on. Iman Fawaz Dharma. Help us, O merciful God, to overcome our negative sense of fear and our resulting attitudes of prejudice. Help us rediscover the feeling of security, peace, and inner comfort under thy protective will. And a thought from Tzu, which is the Taoist. For the mature person, the Tao begins in the relation between man and woman and ends in the infinite vastness of the universe. And the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus saw some infants nursing. He said to his disciples, "These infants are like those who enter the kingdom of heaven." They said to him, "How can we enter?" Jesus said to them, "When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, then you will enter the kingdom." Lovely, lovely thoughts. I always like that part of Jesus' teaching. So why do I continue with this trauma situation and precisely the negative outcome of trauma and the negative emotions which we can experience in so-called a loving relationship? I always say that it takes a man to recognize a woman, and it takes a woman to recognize a man. And I'm not talking about a very handsome, dashing fellow who seduces you with tons of words, a big pocket, a wonderful limousine, or the woman who is a stick of a woman and dress up to kill. I'm not talking about that man and the woman. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about maturity. I'm talking about the grace. I'm talking about the consciousness. So how many of us are there? Not many, but we marry, we fell in love, we long for the Savior, or we long to be loved and cherished without having a slightest idea or comprehension whether we are in a position to comprehend what love is. So very often our marriages, our relationships are plagued by three major situations. They're plagued by projection, they're plagued by triggers, and they're plagued by sarcasms. What is the projection? Projection is like seeing in someone that what we cannot see in ourselves. Projection, of course, is as natural as breathing. It's not something which we have to be ashamed of. We all project. And most of us believe that we project negative things. No, we also project a very positive parts of us into our lovers or husbands or wives or mentors or teachers. When we are unconscious and when we are traumatized, most of our self, as Jung would put it, that is up to 80%, is in subconscious. It's unknown to us. So Jung called that a shadow self, the self which is unknown to us. In the relationship, however, we do get immersed in that triggers and projection. So we do project. I often say to people, and to women particularly, if a man puts you in pedestal, rest assured that he will drop you in his own muddy water. Being in pedestal for a codependent person, insecure woman, sounds terrific. Oh, isn't he just wonderful? No, that means he cannot even see you. He has got no idea who you are. He's only seeing in you that what he wants you to be. And if you're codependent, if you are a love addict, you're going to oblige him for a while, and then hell will break loose. If a woman tells you that she loves everything you do, she loves your hobbies, she's going to fishing with you, and football with you, and rugby with you, be aware that this woman is seducing you by playing you like a dream, like a piano. So pay attention. Why is she not indifferentiated? Why is she hasn't got her own hobby? She is doing the game of seduction, husbandology, as I call it, or wife fishing, as I call it. So we need to pay attention. So we marry, and after a honeymoon, which normally lasts up to maximum 2 years, the things start breaking. We have, above all, not only the projection, but above all triggers. What triggers mean? The triggers which we're so offended by usually help us to return the repressed, that maybe which trauma separated you from. So triggers, every trigger's intention is transformation. So basically, I always say to people and to myself, thank God for trigger. What is it? What is it coming? And when I work with couples, I say, look at each other and see, what have we triggered? What is between us? Because that probably will be the energy of a huge complex. A complex is a stored energy. It could be overwhelming. But if we stay with it, if we look at that, we may grow through it. Because how do we grow? We grow through the marriage. So the triggers are useful, but they can be very, very painful. And it's no point to hate one another for the triggers, which we usually do, but to maybe seek a mentor or a therapist or aunt or a granny or a wise person around you if you cannot cope with it in the marriage, and process that, what is trigger. Because the shadow self has got a lot to come out with. Let me just read something else. O Lord, I place myself in your hands and dedicate myself to you. I pledge myself to your will in all things. That is a part of the Saint Benedict of Nursia praying. So, in a sense, as lots of Jewish rabbis with lots of good Jewish weddings I attended to used to say, and one of the rabbis was very wise, he said, man and woman cannot do things and love together in marriage. They are terribly different. So what do we need? We need a God to help us. We need a sacrament, because if we don't have God in it, we're going to project like hell, we're going to trigger like her, and most likely we're going to kill one another. What a wise rabbi I thought he was. I remember that he came from Canada, and I was very pleased to hear his sermon. We are plagued with the relationships most of the time, and the deep unconscious level, with a frozen resentment, with a storage of unresolved issues, would be like a minefields. So we have to be watchful. Yeah, we cannot both in the marriage have our eyes open all the time or closed all the time. If we are open, we get exhausted. If we're closed, we will get those minefields, because life is full of minefields. So we need to learn to support one another, and we need to see why are we seething with resentment and hate, this supposedly love of our life. And usually we're not going to tell one another that we hate. Whereas Chinese would say, if you hate, that's part of love. What is dangerous is indifference, because if you are indifferent, it means you don't love one another. But we have to learn to know what to do with the hate, unless it's a very narcissistic hate. And as one woman puts it in my work with her, my husband was busy taking inventory of me, and I was busy pretending that he's got no faults. Well, that is a bit too much, yeah, because she got totally crushed, totally exhausted, and ran away. So we have to be willing to see that we are here to grow. We're here to experience absolute hell as much as glory. If we are not doing that, we may, be surprised. One of my colleagues, who is a geneticist, I love genetics, but he's a very good genetics. He used to say that the genetics and the body loads the gun, and the lifestyle puts the trigger. So we are like loaded guns, yeah, because we also carry unresolved traumas and unresolved shame generationally. So imagine we are coming to marriage with absolutely good intention, and my goodness, these good intentions would be a short-lived situation. The triggers normally, projections are natural as breathing. We project all the time, we can spot them. The triggers are much more difficult to spot. The triggers happens when we the least expect. We think we are doing fine, we're really in a lovely space, and whoop-a-doo, something happens. That could be a face, that could be expression, it doesn't have to be a statement. And we need to think and wonder what that trigger means to us, rather than take offense of one another. One of the Taoists once said, "To the good I would be good, to the not good I would be also good, in order to make them good. With the faithful I would keep faith, with the unfaithful I would also keep faith, in order that they may become faithful. Even if a man is bad, how can it be right to cast him off? Requite injury with kindness." Well, that's a fantastic philosophy, but in our hateful situation in the marriage, we won't be able to behave like Taoists. But if we are in the journey towards real life, it won't break us. Even the most extraordinary triggers and the most hateful projection, it would not end up in depression, because it will bring the best of us. We're not here to argue, because if we only argue, we will bring the worst with us. We don't have to complete one another. We are not here to complete one another. Love is not about complete one another. Love is about accepting one another. And if we are fed up with triggers, we're not going to accept. So we need to also look at our pride. We need to look at sarcasm, which is anger, and we need to look at the things which destroy us. I remember one of the first lectures I've heard was on projection, when the lovely Swiss Union analyst was talking about, and when she mentioned 100% projection, which is a love bubble and love addiction and a complete lack of reality and fantasy. In that kind of projection, only hell can break loose. Imagine that. And we think we are in heaven for 5 minutes. So we need to really be aware of that. What are we projecting? What are we want from the partner? We need to pay attention whether what sort of force we're using towards one another. What sort of power? Do we abuse the power? What is the power in a relationship? Very often we are not even aware that power can be very subtle, and we can abuse it very easily. So we need to really truly see the secret of relationship, which is not about living perpetually in the bubble, or living perpetually in our fantasy, but to walk alone one another. And also remember that we must not live the relationship, a true relationship, for a few faults in each other, because nobody is perfect and nobody is always correct, and it's better to love than to seek perfection. At the end, I'd like you to read something else, which is a lovely Rainer Maria Rilke thought on marriage. The point of marriage is not to create a quick commonality by tearing down all boundaries. On the contrary, a good marriage is one in which each partner appoints the other to be guardian of his solitude, and thus they show each other the greatest possible trust. A marriage of two people is an impossibility, and where it seems to exist, it is hemming a mutual consent that robs one party or both parties of their fullest freedom and development. But once the realization is accepted that even between the closest people, infinite distance exists, a marvelous living side by side can grow up for them. And if they succeed in loving the expanse between them, which gives them possibility of always seeing each other as a whole and before an immense sky. So relationship is always about love and space. Best relationship: talk like best friends, play like children, argue like husband and wife, and protect each other like brother and sister. Let's say a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Bye for now.